First contact deception. The vast circular chamber of the Galactic Council pulsed with tension as Commander Elena Reyes stood at the center, her polished dress uniform reflecting the harsh light from above. 50 alien species watched her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disdain. Humanity was the newest arrival to the galactic stage, and many viewed them as primitive upstarts. The Arcadian and Vexor conflict threatens to destabilize 3 sectors, she stated, her voice steady despite the pressure. Earth volunteers to mediate peace talks between the warring factions. A ripple of reactions swept through the chamber, clicking mandibles, flaring gill slits, and translated murmurs of disbelief. High Counselor Juval, a towering being with iridescent scales and 6 eyes arranged in a perfect hexagon, leaned forward. Commander Reyes, your species has barely mastered interstellar travel. The Arcadians and Vexor have been fighting for generations. This conflict predates your discovery of electricity. Laughter echoed through the chamber. Elena didn't flinch. Perhaps that's exactly why we can help. We have no historical bias in this conflict. We offer a truly neutral perspective. Neutrality born of ignorance is hardly valuable, hissed Representative Clar of the Meridian Collective, their feathered crest rising in agitation. Elena activated the holographic display embedded in her podium. With respect, our ignorance has allowed us to see something you've all missed. The display showed battle footage, ship movements, and casualty reports from a dozen skirmishes. As the data scrolled, Elena highlighted specific patterns that emerge. The Arcadians and Vexor never attack each other's core worlds or strategic assets, she pointed out. Their conflicts always occur in neutral space or disputed territories. They've been at war for 3 centuries, yet neither has made a decisive move. She paused, letting her words sink in. This isn't a war. It's a performance. The chamber erupted. Some delegates shouted objections. Others whispered hurriedly to their aides. Counselor Juval raised a clawed hand for silence. A bold accusation, Commander. Do you suggest these civilizations, with their millions of casualties, are merely pretending to be at war? No, Elena replied. I believe they think the war is real. But someone else is orchestrating it, ensuring it never ends and never reaches a conclusion. She nodded to Lieutenant Zhang at the back of the chamber, who transmitted additional data to the central display. Maps of trade routes appeared, followed by resource allocation charts and weapons development timelines. Since the conflict began, 17 corporations have seen profit increases of over 3,000%. Most are weapons manufacturers, mercenary guilds, and reconstruction contractors. Many have board members from both Arcadian and Vexor societies. The silence that followed was heavier than the outburst. Earth requests permission to establish diplomatic contact with both the Arcadian hegemony and the Vexor dominion, with the aim of brokering peace talks. Juval's inner eyelids flickered. An expression Elena had learned indicated deep thought. Your species is remarkably confident, the High Counselor finally said. The Council will consider your request. Until then, remain within designated diplomatic areas. As the chamber emptied, Elena found herself approached by a hunched figure in elaborate robes. Ambassador Trell of the ancient Lorian species beckoned her to follow into a secluded alcove. You're either very brave or very foolish, Commander, the ambassador said, voice a rasping whisper. Which do you think it is? Elena asked. I watched your species' first attempts at spaceflight. Brave and foolish often look the same from a distance. Trell handed her a small data crystal. Not all on the Council are blind to the patterns you've identified. Some profit from them. Others fear what exposing them might mean. Elena pocketed the crystal. And you? I have lived long enough to tire of endless wars. Be careful, Commander. If you're right, powerful interests will not appreciate your interference. 3 days later, the Council granted humanity's request, though with significant restrictions. The Terran diplomatic vessel Concordia would be allowed to host representatives from both the Arcadian hegemony and the Vexer Dominion at a neutral meeting station orbiting the uninhabited world of Epsilon Eridani IV. Elena stood on the bridge of the Concordia as it approached the meeting station, a magnificent ring-shaped structure glittering against the backdrop of the blue-green planet below. "Approaching final checkpoint," reported Lieutenant Zhang from his navigation console. "Both delegations have already arrived. They're docked on opposite sides of the station." Captain Hassan nodded, his weathered face creased with concern. "Status of our security measures." "All protocols active," replied Security Chief Ortega. "Quantum scanners operational. No weapons detected beyond the agreed-upon ceremonial items." Elena checked her uniform one last time. "Remember, this is humanity's debut on the galactic stage. These species have been fighting since our ancestors were building the pyramids. They'll be looking for any sign of weakness or bias." "They'll find neither," Hassan assured her. "Your analysis of their conflict was brilliant. If anyone can make them see reason, it's you." The Concordia docked with a gentle shudder. Elena led the small human delegation through the airlock and into the station's central diplomatic chamber. The room was deliberately designed with 3 equal sections, one for each delegation, converging at a triangular table in the center. The Arcadians entered first. Tall, angular beings with exoskeletons of deep crimson and gold, they moved with precise, measured steps. Their delegation was led by War Prelate Corvin, his carapace decorated with intricate markings of past battles. The Vexer arrived moments later, gliding into the chamber on hovering platforms. Their gelatinous forms pulse with bioluminescent patterns, a complex language visible in the changing colors beneath their translucent outer membranes. First Voice Elara led them, her central mass a deep purple that spoke of authority and ancient lineage. Neither delegation acknowledged the other's presence. Elena stepped forward into the neutral zone between them. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, I welcome both distinguished delegations. We are honored to facilitate this historic meeting." "The honor is questionable," rumbled Corvin, his translator rendering his clicking speech into standard galactic. "We come only because the Council insisted. The Vexer understand nothing but force." Elara's surface rippled with blue patterns of disdain. "The Arcadians speak of force because they lack the capacity for reason. 3 centuries of their aggression has taught us this." Elena raised a hand. "I understand there is deep history between your peoples. But before we revisit old grievances, I would like to present some observations." She activated the central holographic projector. "This is a complete timeline of the conflict between your civilizations, compiled from Council records." The display showed a 3-dimensional map of the disputed sectors, with battle sites highlighted in red. As the timeline advanced, patterns emerged, the conflict expanding and contracting in predictable waves, never threatening core worlds, always leaving key infrastructure intact. "The war between your peoples has lasted 327 standard years," Elena continued. "In that time, neither side has gained or lost significant territory. Neither side has deployed their most powerful weapons. Neither side has attacked the other's homeworld or critical installations." Corvin's mandibles clicked angrily. "You suggest we haven't tried hard enough to destroy our enemy?" "I suggest," Elena replied carefully, "that you're both being manipulated." She expanded the display to show financial data, supply chains, and corporate structures. "These 17 entities profit enormously from your conflict. They sell weapons to both sides. They'd rebuild what gets destroyed. They mine resources from territories you're too busy fighting to develop." Elara's colors shifted to a skeptical yellow. "Corporations follow profit. This proves nothing." "Perhaps not," Elena conceded. "But consider this." The display changed to show communication logs and ship movements. 6 times in the last century, your forces were on the verge of decisive victories or meaningful peace talks. Each time, something happened to escalate the conflict anew. She highlighted specific incidents, mysterious attacks, assassinations, leaked intelligence, each occurring at critical junctures. These interventions all trace back to the same sources. Elena concluded, "You're not fighting each other. You're fighting shadows cast by those who profit from your hatred." A tense silence filled the chamber. Corvin and Alara exchanged the first direct look between them in perhaps centuries. Before either could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. The lights flickered, and the artificial gravity wavered momentarily. "Commander," Lieutenant Zhang's voice came through Elena's comm unit. "We've detected an unidentified energy signature approaching the station. It doesn't match any known." His words were cut off by a deafening explosion. The station shook violently, throwing everyone to the floor. Emergency containment fields activated as atmosphere vented from damaged sections. Through the viewport, Elena watched in horror as an Arcadian vessel erupted in flames, debris scattering into the void. The attack had come from nowhere. No visible attacker, no warning. Corvin rose to his full height, carapace flaring with rage. "Treachery!" he roared, glaring at Alara. "You lured us here for an ambush." The Vexor's surface churned with patterns of shock and defensive anger. "We had nothing to do with this. One of our ships is also under attack." Indeed, a Vexor transport was now venting atmosphere, its bioluminescent hull flickering as emergency systems failed. Elena activated her emergency comlink. "All ships, this is Commander Reyes. Unknown attack in progress. Deploy defensive measures and begin emergency evacuation of the station." She turned to the alien delegates, who were already retreating toward their respective docking bays, guards forming protective formations around them. "Wait," she called. "This is exactly what I was warning you about. Someone doesn't want these talks to succeed." But her words fell on deaf ears as centuries of ingrained hatred and suspicion overrode reason. The fragile opportunity for peace was collapsing before her eyes. As Elena and her team fought to maintain order and assist with evacuations, she caught a glimpse of a small unmarked vessel disappearing into FTL, just beyond the station's defensive perimeter. It had been there all along, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The peace talks were in shambles, but Elena had seen enough. This wasn't a setback, it was confirmation. Someone had just revealed their hand, and humanity had been paying attention. The truth unveiled. 12 hours after the attack, Commander Elena Reyes stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, her uniform still stained with smoke from the damaged station. The chamber was in uproar. "The humans have made things worse," thundered the Meridian representative. "The Arcadians and Vexor are mobilizing their war fleets. We are closer to full-scale war than ever before. The human diplomatic effort is hereby terminated," declared High Counselor Juval. "Your ship will return to Earth space immediately." Elena stepped forward. "With respect, Counselor, we cannot comply with that order." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. "Cannot, or will not." Juval's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Both," Elena replied firmly. "The attack on the peace station proves our theory correct. Someone is manipulating this conflict, and they felt threatened enough by our intervention to take direct action." "Your theory remains unproven," countered Ambassador Clar. Elena activated her data pad, projecting images into the chamber's central display. "We analyzed the energy signature of the weapon used in the attack. It doesn't match Arcadian or Vexor technology." The display showed detailed scans of the damaged vessels, highlighting the unusual pattern of destruction. "This is a molecular destabilizer," Elena continued. "It's designed to look like conventional weapons, but leaves traces that our sensors detected. The technology belongs to the Shakari Syndicate, a weapons cartel operating in the shadows of legitimate commerce." Murmurs spread through the council. The Shakari were known, but rarely discussed in official chambers. Too powerful, too connected to many council members. "The syndicate has board members from 17 corporations," Elena continued, "including representatives from both Arcadian and Vexor societies. The same corporations that have profited most from this endless war." Juval's inner eyelids flickered rapidly. "These are serious allegations, Commander. but they do not justify defying council orders. We tracked the attack vessel, Elena revealed. It jumped to the Cygnus Reach. We believe the Syndicate has a major operations center there, one that coordinates their manipulation of the Arcadian-Vexor conflict. She straightened her shoulders. The Concordia is already en route to investigate. Captain Hassan sends his apologies for the breach of protocol. Outrage erupted once more. Juval raised all four arms for silence. You risk interstellar incident, Commander. The Council cannot protect you if you're wrong. And if we're right? Elena asked. Will the Council acknowledge its centuries of complicity through inaction? Before Juval could respond, the ancient Lorian ambassador, Trell, hobbled to the center of the chamber. I move that we observe, the ancient alien rasped. Let the humans proceed. If they fail, they alone bear responsibility. If they succeed, Trell's compound eyes fixed on Juval. Then many of us will have difficult questions to answer. After heated debate, the Council narrowly approved Trell's motion. Elena was permitted to rejoin the Concordia, but with strict limitations: no Council support, no military backup, and full responsibility for any diplomatic incidents. 3 days later, the Concordia dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Cygnus Reach, a sparse region of space, dotted with asteroid fields and the remnants of a long-dead civilization. Passive scans only, ordered Captain Hassan from the command chair. If the Syndicate has a base here, they'll have detection grids. Elena studied the tactical display. There, she pointed to an unremarkable asteroid cluster. That formation isn't natural. Those rocks have been positioned deliberately. Security Chief Ortega enhanced the image. Thermal signatures hidden, but present. Radiation bafflers in operation. Someone's trying very hard not to be noticed. Plot an approach through the debris field, Hassan ordered. Minimum power. Let's see what they're hiding. The Concordia glided silently through the asteroid belt, using the larger rocks as cover. As they drew closer to the suspicious cluster, details emerged. What had appeared to be natural formations revealed themselves as camouflaged structures. Docking bays, sensor arrays, and defensive installations built directly into the asteroids. It's a major operation, Ortega whispered, as if afraid the Syndicate might hear through the vacuum of space. Look at the traffic logs we're picking up. Ships from dozens of worlds, including Arcadian and Vexor military vessels. Elena's eyes narrowed. Military vessels that shouldn't be meeting in secret. We need proof, Hassan said. Concrete evidence that the Council can't ignore. Elena nodded toward the science station. Are we in range for quantum entanglement surveillance? Lieutenant Jean looked up from his console. Yes, Commander, but it's risky. We'll need to deploy probes, and if they're detected, deploy them, ordered Hassan. This may be our only chance. The Concordia launched 3 stealth probes toward different sections of the hidden base. For tense hours, they waited as the probes established surveillance links and began transmitting data back to the ship. What they discovered exceeded their darkest suspicions. The base served as a neutral meeting ground where Arcadian and Vexor military officials met with Syndicate representatives. Ship manifests revealed weapons sales to both sides. Financial records showed payments to operatives embedded in both governments. Most damning of all were the strategic planning rooms, where Syndicate analysts mapped out future incidents designed to keep the conflict simmering without allowing either side to gain advantage. They've been engineering this war for centuries, Elena said, reviewing the evidence. Keeping it perfectly balanced. Enough destruction to maintain hatred, enough restraint to prevent total victory or defeat. We're transmitting everything to Ambassador Trell, Jean reported. But there's a complication. He pointed to a newly arrived vessel docking with the base, a Galactic Council diplomatic ship. Counselor Vexhar. Elena recognized the markings. The Proxian representative who argued most strongly against our intervention. A council member involved with the Syndicate. Hassan's face darkened. This goes higher than we thought. Before they could process this revelation, alarms blared across the bridge. "We've been detected," Ortega shouted. "Defensive systems activating throughout the base. Evasive maneuvers," ordered Hassan. "Get us clear of the asteroid field." The Concordia lurched as its engines roared to life, but it was too late. Energy weapons lanced from hidden emplacements, striking the ship's shields with devastating force. "Shields at 60%, reported the tactical officer. "They're targeting our engines." Another hit rocked the ship. Conduits burst overhead, showering the bridge with sparks. 40%. "We can't take much more of this." Elena gripped the console as the ship shuddered under another impact. "We need to get the evidence out. Prepare a data packet for emergency broadcast to all frequencies. Include the council chambers and both Arcadian and Vexer central commands." "That would violate all communication protocols," Jean pointed out. "That's the point," Elena replied. "The Syndicate has thrived in secrecy. Let's drag them into the light." Hassan nodded grimly. "Do it." As Jean prepared the broadcast, a new alert sounded. "Multiple ships dropping out of FTL," Ortega reported, then paused in disbelief. It's an Arcadian battle group. And Vexer vessels approaching from the other vector." They followed Vexhar, Elena realized. They must have been suspicious already. The view screen showed the newly arrived ships, the hereditary enemies now faced with the evidence of their centuries-long manipulation. For a moment, weapons remained trained on each other, centuries of conditioning hard to overcome. Then something remarkable happened. The Arcadian flagship transmitted an open communication, not to the Vexer, but to the Syndicate base. "Attention, illegal installation," came the translated voice of War Prelate Corvin. "You will power down all systems and prepare to be boarded for inspection." Almost simultaneously, First Voice Alara's message broadcast from the Vexer formation. "Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction. You have deceived our peoples for the last time." The Syndicate base erupted in activity, some ships attempting to flee, others powering weapons. In the chaos, the Concordia managed to limp away from the main battle zone. "They're ignoring us," Ortega said, sounding almost offended. "They have bigger problems," Elena replied, watching as Arcadian and Vexer forces, acting separately but with remarkable coordination, began systematically cutting off escape routes and disabling Syndicate defenses. "Should we assist?" asked Hassan. Elena shook her head. "This is their fight now. We've done our part." 3 weeks later, Commander Elena Reyes once again stood before the Galactic Council. This time, however, she wasn't alone. War Prelate Corvin and First Voice Alara flanked her, representing their respective civilizations in an unprecedented joint appearance. The council chamber was subdued. Several seats remained conspicuously empty, representatives implicated in the Syndicate's operations now facing justice on their homeworlds. High Counselor Juval spoke first, his voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. "The Council acknowledges the service rendered by the Terran diplomatic mission. The evidence you provided has exposed corruption that reached into the highest levels of galactic governance." Corvin stepped forward, his crimson carapace now bearing new markings, symbols of truth rather than battle. "For 3 centuries, the Arcadian people believed we fought a necessary war against implacable enemies. We now know we were pawns in a game of profit and power." Alara's surface rippled with patterns of solemn agreement. "The Vexer and Arcadian civilizations have begun the long process of understanding our true history, separating manufactured hatreds from genuine grievances. There will be justice," Corvin continued. "The Syndicate's operations have been dismantled. Those who orchestrated this deception will face prosecution from a joint tribunal of our peoples." Elena listened silently, aware of the historic nature of this moment. 2 species that had considered themselves mortal enemies for generations, now standing together before the galaxy. Juval's inner eyelids flickered in what Elena had come to recognize as embarrassment. The Council must also acknowledge its failure. We were too willing to accept the status quo, too reluctant to question established narratives. The High Counselor turned to Elena. Humanity's perspective, untainted by centuries of galactic politics, proved invaluable. Where we saw an intractable conflict, you recognized patterns that should have been obvious. We have much to learn from each other, Elena replied diplomatically. Indeed, agreed Juval. Which is why the Council has unanimously voted to establish a permanent human presence in our deliberations. You are hereby invited to appoint a full ambassador to the Galactic Council. Murmurs of approval spread through the chamber, genuine this time, not the political theater Elena had witnessed at her first appearance. As the formal proceedings concluded, Elena found herself approached by the ancient Lorian, Ambassador Trell. You have accomplished in weeks what the Council failed to do in centuries, the ambassador said quietly. We had the advantage of fresh eyes, Elena replied. Trell's compound eyes studied her. Perhaps, or perhaps you possess something the rest of us have forgotten, the courage to question what everyone accepts as truth.